Hello everybody, Michael Bohl here, and today we're going to talk all about categories. On a WordPress post, your categories, they live here under categories. And you can see I have a category called tips, cards, and then uncategorized. By default, WordPress puts everything in uncategorized, so if you don't use categories, then they will all become uncategorized. Okay, well, yeah, so what? What does all this mean? Well, categories can be a little hard to explain, but let's give it a shot by talking about the library. So here's my library example. So if you were to look at every single book here and pretend that each of these books is a post that you've made on your website, you can imagine how having so many posts, just like so many books, would become hopelessly difficult and hard to find and to understand where to locate it. So what libraries do is they have categories, which are basically sections. So for example, this might be the fiction section. Over here might be the nonfiction section. Maybe over here is the history section. So if I wanted to walk into a library and just look around at all the different history books, I'd go to the history section, and then I'd find them all there. Now, libraries have ways to even categorize and organize it a lot more in a lot more detail, but this just gives the overall example or concept of what a category is. So when I go to my website, you can see right now I have two different categories, and these categories also show up here, and I've added them as we go. So over here, my category is cards. So these are just different cards in Clash Royale. And here is tips. These are different tips that you can have in Clash Royale. Again, I add them as categories. Now let's learn how to add those categories. Adding categories is fairly straightforward. The hardest part about adding categories is figuring out what categories you want to add. Now, in the beginning, you might not be that good at it, and you might add too few or too many categories. But don't worry about it. You can always change those later. I know when I first started adding categories, I added zillions of them, and I realized, wait a minute, that is way too much. So let's look at here at this example. As I mentioned already, I have two types of categories: cards, tips, uncategorized, which is always there by default. But in this post, it's called Best Cookies to Eat While Playing Clash Royale. Now, it doesn't really make sense that I'd use cards or tips. Instead, I'm going to use a category called food. I'm just doing this for fun. I'm actually going to delete it later. But I clicked on the Add New Category, and I type in food. And then, strangely again, I click Add New Category again. Now, you can do a parent category. For example, this could be under cards and all that sort of stuff to sub-organize it. And in my opinion, probably over-organize it. I don't use subcategories a whole lot. So instead, I'm gonna just go ahead and hit Add New Category. And then you can see here it's in food. And then when I publish it, I'll now be able to organize it by that category. So I have three categories now: cards, tips, and see three, not cookies, but food. And now I can talk later about how to organize those categories on your page. But for now, just go ahead and start to categorize your posts. The reason you'll be doing it and the way it'll organize itself will probably make more sense later.